Hey
And
everybody, I'm Ryan Doyle at the Verdigris Table, and as you can see, I am not alone today. I am here with Brad from the Dire Den. What's up, Brad?
hey, how's it going? I'm glad to be here. This is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm really glad we got to connect. We've been talking about this for a little bit. But we were supposed to do this with that Jeremy Crawford video, which I watched your take on, and I agree with a lot of what you were saying. That would have been a good conversation. But here we are. We are talking about ways to start your D&D campaign that isn't in a tavern.
Yeah, so this is our top 10 ways to not start in a tavern. I think that's the best way I can describe it.
So you're gonna see five in this video, and when we get down to it, it's probably gonna be more than five. And then at the end of this video, you can follow over to Brad's channel and see the next five, which we're gonna save the good stuff for the end. So definitely go check that out. Um, and it's funny because I have just kind of arbitrarily one day decided to like plant my flag on the hill of like, no, it's good to start in a tavern and everybody should start in a tavern. One, because it's funny to pick fights on the internet and someone's going to yell at you in the comments. You might as well choose what it's about, right? But yeah, I think variety is the spice of life. I don't think there's anything wrong with starting in a tavern, but once you're starting your, fifth, 10th, 20th campaign, you start looking around like, oh, what else can we do here? Because you're going to end up in the tavern anyway. It's inevitable. So you might as well like take your shot in the beginning to set the tone.
Yeah, 100%. Like I agree. Like I think it's perfectly fine to start in a tavern, and maybe we'll do another collab where we talk about 10 ways to start in a tavern.
Ooh, I like it. I like that.
I've definitely had some fun tavern opening scenes for sure. My favorite one is where the tavern got attacked by a wizard and fell over a waterfall. So so it instantly became a skill challenge as they were trying to steer the broken tavern downriver.
That's pretty cool actually. Trying to now it's a boat. Now it's a houseboat. I've had
Yes.
several taverns burned down because somebody always figures out like alcohol is flammable and like half of the spells on my list make fire happen. So like I've had several taverns burned down, and one I found a random table, rolled for weather. It was windy, and they were in like the port side of town basically. They were by like the warehouses and like all the shanties and stuff. So the town went up.
So there you go. That's tip number one: how to start an adventure. Burn down the town.
That is the ultimate dungeon master freedom is like I am willing to let this all burn to the ground because I got so many beginnings. Like I am so ready to just start over that I am unshakable. I would love to figure out what the aftermath of your insanity is, because you're going to upset a lot of people when you burn this place down. And now we got an adventure on our hands.
Well, so the first idea I had instead of starting a tavern is a disaster, whether it's a natural disaster or man-made disaster. You just throw the players into this situation where they are overwhelmed by something and they have to figure their way out of it. One of the ones I've used before is a sinkhole.
Mm.
So they're in town, and you ask the players, okay, where are you in town? And one says, I'm at the blacksmith, I'm at the bar, I'm over here. And then the sinkhole hits, and those five buildings, like the sinkhole is big enough to take, all the, like if you have five players, the sinkhole is big enough to suck all five of those buildings down underground. And now you're at the dungeon, and the only resources you have are whatever was in those buildings that the player characters named.
Ooh, that's brilliant. I like that a lot because it becomes like a survival game at that point. Here's your inventory. You didn't know you were choosing your inventory, but here's your inventory, right? Like, all right, okay, I picked blacksmith, so at least we have some weapons. And yeah, there's food at the tavern or like something we can fashion a torch out of.
And everybody's looking at the player who picked bathhouse. Like,
Exactly.
Okay, you brought water.
Exactly. So I am in a bathrobe. So if I could get some of that armor from the blacksmith guy, that would be great. Or I guess I'm just rolling up a wizard now. But I like the idea of like the strong start. Okay, react to this. Because I think maybe the weakness of starting in a tavern, not that there's anything wrong with that, is that we put the player characters around a table and then expect them to role play and act and like maybe we're getting to know each other, maybe we do know each other, and we're like having a little infights because we're relatives or something. But the whole like, okay, now you're in the dungeon immediately. Makes you're jumping into the game right away,
Hmm.
and there's no way out, right? It feels like if the town gets swallowed by the dungeon, there's no going back to town for safety.
And then the other thing you can do with a disaster is like the natural disaster. Like I've started in the middle of a thunderstorm,
Mm.
um, and then again going back to man-made disaster. The other thing I've done is with a sci-fi game. They were in the middle of a riot, like citywide riot.
Hmm. That's cool. Yeah, because now you're reacting to, I mean, maybe a bunch of, commoners or something. But you get enough pitchforks and torches. I don't care how many. If I keep rolling d4s, eventually, especially at level 1, you're gonna get got.
Right. Well, then in a sci-fi game, you've got like the rioters themselves. They're like commoners with clubs or
Yeah,
whatever.
it's like pneumatic pitchforks and like plasma torches or something.
but then you also have the law enforcement shows up and like
Mm,
and at that point it's a riot, so it doesn't matter if you're not one of the rioters.
yes.
The law enforcement is just trying to shut everybody down.
Pure chaos. Having them, and it sets the tone too, right? Like what you're supposed to do. It's not like I guess I'm gonna look at a menu and order a pint of ale. Like no, it's on. You're gonna do everything you can to survive and react to the situation on the ground, and something's happening right away. I mean, you want to make a story interesting, start with a bang. Right now you got him, hooked. You don't have to worry like what's my motivation. Don't die by the futuristic fire hose and these like the mecha SWAT team that's about to show up.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing you can do with natural disasters is you can also throw in skill challenges, is like a building falls
Mm.
down around you, or like, there's a runaway, wagon, right? Something, there's all the like you just think of everything that could go wrong in the middle of a natural disaster and just throw it at the players as either a combat or a skill challenge.
Yeah, because you get those like the first couple die rolls of the campaign are powerful, and then roll for initiative that first time is powerful. And if it's not the same die roll, now you're getting twice as much of that excitement and action to like that newness. I like that a lot, and I mean I just like a good excuse for a skill challenge anyway. Like think it's not just okay. I'm gonna move 30 feet. I'm gonna roll to hit. It's like okay, what do you be creative? Think about what you're gonna do. There's consequences if you don't. Yeah, that's always fun. And so much D&D and all TTRPGs are like you're in a post-apocalyptic world. Something's happened, and now there's like stuff laying around that we can go get and discover. But like, show me that thing happening. Why not put me, on that flying city that's about to crash into the ground,
There you go.
right?
Yeah,
Don't tell me
that
that
sounds awesome.
that happened a million years ago. Cool. That's fun. All right. I guess we'll go find their garbage. No, that's happening right now. That's happening right now. If your character, I'm sorry, if your character survives, you're going to get to play, the usual thing after that. But first, how are you going to fashion a parachute out of bed sheets to not get got this time around?
Right. The other thing too with the like it might be a natural disaster, but it could also be man-made natural disaster because you're in a world with magic.
Mm-hmm.
So like the time where I started the characters in the middle of a thunderstorm, the thunderstorm was actually cast by a powerful mage. So that introduced the villain of the plot. Um, so they already hated the villain because they started the game trapped in a thunderstorm and had to find their way out.
Oh, that's cool. I had like a starting. This is like maybe treading onto maybe one of the other entries on our list here. But things were happening, and the big powerful wizard in town cast meteor swarm on themselves and the bridge to save the town. So now you can't go that way. First of all, I've haven't railroaded you, but I've like put some bumpers on the campaign for the first few levels, and the person that they would go to for help is gone, right? So in this natural disaster situation, I mean, if you open up a sinkhole, you're the only people down here. It's just you to survive. But like yeah, in the riots or whatever, if the rioters win and the police lose, or whoever, I mean, in whatever dystopian fantasy, maybe the police win and the rioters lose, whoever's the good guys lose, then like, yeah, there's no one else but you, and now you have to step up.
Right.
It's a good way to tee up that like drama too. It's like, well, everyone else is gone. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to like get the players to become the heroes, right? Because they just watched the heroes of the town die in this disaster, and now they're the only ones left to
Mm-hmm.
protect the innocent, right? Yeah.
And I do like putting a little bit of like the fear into the players right away. If you can show, all right, this guy's crazy strong. Oh, and now he's dead. Be careful. Like, I like the dead adventurers in the dungeon, or like the big 14th level wizard getting got by the army of the hobgoblins that are attacking. Yeah, good stuff. So that's a solid one. That feels like a good start to this list.
And so what's the next one on or the first one on your list?
So number two, or 1A, it's kind of the opposite of a natural disaster, maybe, but a festival.
Oh yeah.
I actually just ran one the other night, last week. It was the spring solstice. We just started this campaign. We're figuring out like everybody's. We were figuring out people's deities and stuff, so I didn't want to tie it too heavily into the lore. I was trying to keep things open ended. But here's every NPC in town in the same, village green. So you can interact with all these people, get kind of like insight checks on some of them, see who's a big player in town. And also here's a bunch of silly games, right? Like the skill challenge again. It's not, are you going to survive? It's like, are you going to win this pie eating contest without puking on your shoes and embarrassing yourself? And inevitably someone's going to cheat, and there's going to be consequences if someone catches them casting a spell.
Yeah, and festivals are great because it's a great way to introduce lore to the players, right?
Mm.
You like you said, you can involve the deities that are being celebrated at this festival, or you can the festival can be commemorating some sort of big historical event, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, you can do that with the festival, so the players are learning about the world, but they're doing it as a part of a festival instead of you just giving them a big lore dump.
Right. I mean, the best way to learn about any culture is to eat their food, which is not too much of an option at the D&D game, right? Like, it's pizza and Doritos. I'm sorry, but celebrate with them, like seeing their holidays. How these people party is going to tell you a lot about, like, is this a somber ritualistic occasion? Is this like a bacchanalia? Everyone's going nuts and getting trashed. Like, are we exploding, fireworks? Is this the beginning of Lord of the Rings here? What do we? You have a lot of options, and a lot of like organic ways to get some lore in front of the players, and who knows, maybe do some foreshadowing.
Right. Yeah, like your big bad can be like part of the festival. Like,
Mm, mm.
like you could have like this powerful figure who's part of a parade in the middle of this festival, and it's a great way to introduce this, how everybody respects this guy, but then you also find out that everybody fears this guy.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
The marshal of the parade, I guess. The drum major.
Yeah,
I don't know. I forget the term.
Grand Marshal, is that
Grand
what
Marshal, the Grand Marshal, the dude,
yeah.
who's like running the ceremonies, right? Is Ganondorf, right? Like, is the evil wizard who's got this whole place under his thumb.
Yeah.
Or he's like up in the booth somewhere, like waving politely and barely, watching the the pie eating contest and the joust,
Right.
the catch the greased pig.
Yeah, grease pig. I actually did that one time as a kid. I like when I was like, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years old.
Wait, in game, or like we're talking real life? You caught a grease
In
pig?
real life, yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man, okay, nice.
Yeah, like I grew up in the city, and like I guess my mom got this crazy idea to take me to a rodeo. So we drove out of town, and like and like, all right, kids, it's your turn. Everybody come down, and yeah, and they let go of this grease pig, and everybody's chasing it, and I'm just like half-ass running because like I don't want to catch a grease pig.
Exactly. Yeah. Did you make contact? Did you touch it? Did you get like get rid of
No,
them?
I just ran around like I found the biggest kid because I figured he's probably gonna win, and I just followed him around and just kind of ran behind him the whole time.
Ooh, smart, smart.
But I've done the festival thing a few times in D&D. One of the most interesting ones I did with the festival was it was part of session 0, so we were role playing the festival,
Hmm.
and the different games they would roll 3d6 to see who won, and that was how they rolled up their stats.
Oh, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah, because
So
I
like,
mean, my idea is like, okay, here's a dex-based game, here's a con-based game, but like, here's a con-based game, and if you win, congratulations, you have a +2 to Constitution. Oh, you failed, -1. That's interesting because that now there's stakes, right? Because it's like a fluffy little thing before the action starts. But if this is determining your ability scores, ooh, I like that a lot. I might be stealing that. I'm gonna bookmark this video.
so that was just a fun way to both like introduce the lore of the setting and roll the stats at the same time. So like, I can't remember what like the strength and constitution tests were, but the intelligence and wisdom,
Hmm.
like one of them involved like a paladin getting up and giving a like a sermon, and then there was a puzzle game
Hmm.
where they had to solve the puzzle about the gods that were talked about in that sermon. And so that was their wisdom challenge, and that's how they determined their wisdom score. So it was a way to like introduce some lore and then also figure out what their wisdom score was.
That's perfect. I did it once in one of my games, and it was okay. I'm not gonna say it was one of my finest sessions ever, but going back to the tavern eventually, trivia night in the tavern. You want your players to care about lore, put some gold pieces behind knowing the answers to it, and
Well, that's a great
you
idea.
might
Yeah.
get different results. Yeah, and people like trivia night. If you got a trivia fan at the table, all of a sudden now it's like, oh, yeah, I'm gonna write this down now that they know what's coming. But yeah, I really like. So if you're rolling for stats anyway, you've already gamified it. Why not take it one step further? I really like that one. I really like that one. I almost wish, yeah, if I was doing that festival next week, maybe we would have been rolling for stats instead of point buy.
So the next one is it's a mystery where the players are the suspects.
Hmm.
And so the way you do it is you have, at least the way I've done it, is it's like two truths and a lie,
Mm-hmm.
right? The players make up two lies and one truth about their character. And then assuming you have four players, right? So if you have four players, it's two lies and one truth. And then you pass those out to the other characters, to the other players. So each person has three things that are rumors about the other characters. So that's how you introduce the characters to each other. And so you do that during session 0. And then between session 0 and session 1, you take those truths and lies about the characters and you make a murder mystery or like a missing MacGuffin, and they are the prime suspects.
I love that. I love that, and that's. I mean, I've done something similar with it without the mystery aspect of it, but like write down rumors about like they can be true, they can be false, they can be like half true, which is interesting too. Like I can see how they got there, but because yeah, what does my character know about your character going into this game is a great way to set up some RP moments. It's not just like, well, my character is wearing this and is this. Like, no, this is what I think about your character, and it's probably and odds are it's wrong. It's something I've heard about your character, and now I
Right.
have a false assumption that has to be clarified, or they could play against, or. But to take that one step further, because either someone's a murderer, right? And now the whole time I'm looking around the table,
Right.
or you're being falsely accused, and that feels like a pretty good way to get around the murder hobo. I'm going to be as evil as I can in this game because, like, in real life, I'm lawful good, maybe chaotic good. So, like, we're gonna tread some pretty dark places. If you're up against it, if you're already being accused of murder, now you have to like, prove that you're a proper, upstanding citizen and do the right thing and figure out who is evil. It's very
Right.
interesting.
Yeah. So even if you're playing like the chaotic neutral rogue or whatever who would be doing shady stuff, you at least for the first session, you've got to be on your best behavior so that you don't look like the criminal, right?
Yeah, you get one. You get one good one before. All right, you guys have to act like heroes for like 3 hours, then we'll get back to the hijinks, I swear.
Yeah. Well, so the hardest part about that is just coming up with the mystery itself,
Mm,
right? But so you take all the different rumors about the player characters, and then you kind of have to like think about it to come up with a good mystery of like how they could be falsely accused of something.
mhm,
But then building that first game session, like the first adventure, is pretty straightforward because what you can do is you can have the good guys, right? Like the city guard or the knights of the church, right? They're the ones investigating and they're the ones accusing you of wrongdoing. And then you have some bad guys who aren't the ones who committed the crime, but they want the MacGuffin or they want revenge for the person who was murdered, right?
mm,
So you have like an evil
mm.
cult or a thieves guild. So now you have, a group of good guys and a group of bad guys. So you have two factions that are both out to get the players because they think they're the person who stole the thing, or they think they're the murderers, right? And then
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then the third piece of the puzzle is the real criminal, the person who really did it.
Right, and that person is not necessarily the person that has framed the players too. If you got to get a fourth out of there,
That's true. Yeah, you could always have a fourth person who's the one who's orchestrated the frame
like
job.
the mastermind, because he had to start the game as like a patsy. And now people are coming for you to have people coming for you because they think you have the treasure, which you would love to have, but you don't. But now there are assassins on your trail because of it. Again, it puts the players on the back foot right away. Like you are reacting. There is no, yeah. You have to act. You have to decide what you're going to do, and you're deeply motivated to figure out what's going on here.
So you could do your strong start where like the thieves guild attacks because they think you have the thing. So
Mm-hmm,
your strong
mm-hmm,
start is a combat, and
mm-hmm.
then the city watch shows up and accuses you. So you have your role play, and then the finale of that first session is where you track down the real criminal, and that's either going to be a chase scene or another combat to end that first session. Um, and then you can pull out a villain for the rest of the campaign, whether it's the crooked city watchman, or make the thieves guild a bigger player, or like you said, there's a mastermind behind so they catch the real criminal, but there's a mastermind behind it all, and that sets up the rest of the campaign, something along those lines.
And it's nice to have options, especially right away. It's nice to have a bunch of different factions instead of NPCs, because any NPC at any given moment could die. But like, as if he's part of an organization, then you can keep sending the criminal element or the city watch. But like, you don't know how the players are going to react, and all of a sudden you thought like this was going to be the quest giver, but they hate this guy. Well, he's the bad guy because
Right.
they decided that the thieves guild's making a lot of sense and they rather work with them. So it's like,
Right.
all right, we're going against the city watch now, even though Commander McGuffinstein was supposed to be the guy this whole time. You never, and then they're going to adopt a goblin. Like you never know what the players are going to do. So like having more options to adapt. And it's interesting too, because like the mystery aspect of it. So you have it solved when you start. Like you know the answer. They don't, but like the you as the dungeon master know the solution to the puzzle to start.
Right. I would at least do like who the person is who committed the main crime. Like the
Mm-hmm.
crime that they are being accused of, who actually committed it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But like you could leave that mastermind, the person who's behind it, you could leave that open to the player's interpretation. Right. So like you said, that way you've got a couple of factions who are fighting over this missing MacGuffin or trying to get payback for this murder, right? But you don't know which one the players are going to consider the good guy or the bad guy. So
Mm-hmm.
therefore, you could just wait and see and then through the course of play figure out who the mastermind's going to be.
I like that a lot. And you're sitting down at the table like maybe the rogue is the murderer. Like I don't know right away. And like even if I the player know, the character doesn't necessarily know at first. And that's rich roleplay opportunities there of like, because a lot of times people want that naturally anyway, right? Like You meet at the
Right.
tavern. You don't know each other. There's a lot of like side eye, right? Am I going to let these people roll inside checks against each other or not? Like, what's in it for me to team up with you, whatever. So it's just like one of us probably murdered this guy. Like, let's turn that to 11. So we just like clear the pipes right away from all of that, and now we're working together to clear our names.
Well, the other thing you can do, which I've done before, is you get one of the players to be the inside guy, right? So you talk to one of the players ahead of time, the one that can handle it, right? And you go ahead and they start the game as the bad guy instead of their actual character. So the first session, they're playing, a villain who's going to betray the party, and then you know and then like the next session they show up with their real character after after they you know they have the players turn against them, or they turn against the players, or however it comes out.
There are so many like DMPC horror stories on the internet that would be like so amazing if they just brought in a buddy to play the NPC for like a session or two. Like I've been that guy, and it is awesome to be like there is a place between player and DM that is like very fun to occupy for like a session or two, and like to end up like, like either you go play your own game, or now you go back to the PC role. But like that like player DM tag team really opens up your options for like some big dramatic beats. You can overdo it, I guess, like anything else.
So cool. So what's our next one on the list?
So we are talking about number 4 now. Whoops. Is perhaps could be a lot of these could be actually be combined, but one way to start a mystery would be at a funeral. And this is one that I thought, this is one I haven't done before. This is one that I thought up because I knew we were doing this. I was like, what would be a really like interesting, creative way to start a campaign? And funeral has a lot of implications. One, it's like here's a charged dramatic scene, right? If you do have a table full of role players, right? Like someone could be bawling in the corner and comforting and whatever, but like someone's dead. How did they die? What got them? What are we going to do about it? Right? Maybe this is completely a mystery. There's a ton of ways to, maybe this is someone from your backstory. There's a lot of ways to hook this into what's going to happen in the campaign and the characters at the same time. A lot of like emotional meat on that bone.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I could even see like going around the table and each player getting to say how they knew the person who died, right? That would be a great way to introduce characters to each other through the lens of how they knew this person and why they were attending the funeral.
Right. Incredible. Because there is such a, how do you know this pivotal NPC that's going to be giving you quests for the first 4 levels is a common move and a good one. Nothing wrong with that. But, here's our session 0, session, 0.5. You're going to get up and, do the eulogy. Like, how do you know this person? How did you know this person?
Right.
And why are you going to avenge their death?
Yeah. Well, and that could exactly be that thing like we talked about earlier, where a hero has died and who's going to step up, right? That like sets those first level characters up to like be like, all right, we're going to be the guys. We're going to be the ones that are going to make a difference now that, Gandalf is dead or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, Lord of the Rings gets a lot more interesting when Gandalf takes his little tumble. It's cool when he comes back, but like maybe he shouldn't have. I don't know. It's come at me in the comments. Get the pneumatic pitchforks out. But there's two ways to make like things happen in your campaign world, right? There's somewhere there's a force that's doing, somewhere the big bad evil guy is pushing, right? Or there's a power vacuum.
Right.
And I really like power vacuums because it doesn't feel obvious out of the gate, and the players are almost inevitably going to create some sort of power vacuum without considering the consequences of it at some point. And now I'm not going to be like, you killed the big bad evil guy, haha, here's a bigger bad because it's your fault. But like, the one that got away, or the leader of the thieves guild. He wasn't a good guy, but he was maybe keeping things in check on that side of town, and now the balance has been disturbed, and uh-oh.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's kind of like, I mean, it was a terrible part of like world history, right? The French Revolution, right? But like imagine a setting like that where like you overthrow one bad guy and just another bad guy rises and another bad guy rises, and it's just one revolution after another, really, right? Um, but no, I love a power vacuum because one of my main like campaign design tips is to have four feuding factions, right? So you create four factions, and any one of those could be the bad guy. Going back to like giving the players the choice, like the big bad could come from any of these four factions, and as a DM, you don't know which one they're going to identify and which one's going to end up being the big bad of the campaign, but it's probably going to come from one of these four factions. And so that power vacuum is what drives that conflict between those four factions. If you come up with four factions and give them a good power vacuum, right, and then you can have conflict between each of those factions, and that's just one dramatic tension after another for the players to unravel, right?
And I think that might sound scary to like a newer DM watching this, maybe.
Mhm.
But two things: one, that keeps it a game for us on the other side of the screen, right? I don't know what's I'm gonna figure out what's gonna happen too by playing this game. I don't need to be the puppet master the entire time because it's gonna be less fun for the players, and it's gonna be less fun for me.
Right.
But two, you're also like building yourself a bunch of pressure release valves, right? I knew this was going to be the big bad for level 5, and they don't go there till level 17, right? Now I can pump that up. I can level that up because they haven't interacted with it yet, or vice versa. He was supposed to be the big bad at level 17, and he bought it at 5. It keeps your options open, and you have more fun doing it. And yeah, I mean to have like the big bad evil guy dead right out of the gate,
Ooh, yeah.
creating
The
like this is like a state funeral, right? Like the emperor has ruled the imperium for 1,000 years with an iron fist, and now he's gone,
Yes.
and all hell's about to break loose. And like, pick your side. Now we're talking feuding factions because, yeah, power's up for grabs now. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Um, I didn't start the campaign with the actual funeral, but I did start a campaign where the emperor was dead, like
Mm,
or the king. The king was dead, and his son was too young to inherit the throne,
mm,
and so his brother became regent, right? But most of the nobles didn't support that regent, right? So there's like, so
classic.
you got a guy in charge, but it's a guy that nobody likes,
Yeah.
and now you have like you know the son who's too young, and who's puppeting him, and then you have these other nobles that are all vying for the throne, and it creates this like big old conflict.
That's good because it can be like you could get to Game of Thrones or Shakespeare with that real fast.
Yeah.
I've had that like happening like off screen in a couple campaigns. Like you're in the hinterlands, and the reason that there is no like the power vacuum is the empire, right? You are at the bleeding edge, and now it's contracted because there's a civil war going on. You can go participate in that civil war if you want to, or you can push into the wilderness. Most people push into the wilderness, but it's been sitting there for campaign. I've been ready. I've had dukes and yeah, all sorts of machinations going on, be off screen, ready to pop.
One of the really fun parts about that game is like the inn, right? The players frequented. There
Mm-hmm.
was a kid who worked there, and the owner of the inn was a former adventurer, and over time they met this like retired adventuring party. They all kind of hung out at this inn, and it turns out what they were actually doing is these retired adventurers were protecting the son of the king. And
Mm.
so the kid that's been serving your food like night after night, every time you go back to the inn after you go off adventuring, is actually the heir to the throne, and he's just in disguise as this, pretending to be the innkeeper's son and feeding them the serving their meals and cleaning up after them and all that sort of stuff.
I love that. I love that. That had to be like a deeply satisfying payoff. That, yeah, that's cool. Put more kids in your games, dungeon masters out there. You want your players don't care about any of the NPCs. Have a little urchin run up to them in the middle of the street and be like, "Wow, wide-eyed," and like ask to take their sword. I do it all of the time. I do it in the first 3 sessions of every game, just so like, what's that kid's name? Cool. He might get abducted later or come up with an idea later, or like what? Just like 5 minutes of role playing a child, and now like, woo, they're gonna remember the kid. They're gonna care about the kid. They will die for the kid. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
nice
I had one of my players who actually, and it was just one of those like ad lib role playing moments, and I just had some kids who ran into the player character, and then the next time they went to the town, I held on to that idea, and so when they came back, like outside of these kids' little hut where they live, these little poor little kids, they had built a little statue to honor their hero. Right.
Yes.
So it was a statue of the player characters that was the kids had made out of like, driftwood and makeshift bits and bobbles. And the player absolutely loved that.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, every opportunity to like make them feel like heroes too. Like, and kids seem to be my go-to for that. For whatever reason, it's easier to like, oh, the king's gonna grant me a title. Like, I know this little child built a little driftwood version of me. Like, that's all I need. That's all the recognition I need. Oh, I love that stuff.
Cool. Yeah. So the start at the funeral, I think, has a lot of opportunity to it. Like, there's a lot of good ideas that can come out of the start with the funeral idea. I like that a lot. So, and then the next one that I have is the reverse dungeon.
Mm. So I saw this on your list, and I was like, this is the one that I wouldn't have, like, I needed you for this one. I wouldn't have got there by myself. That's, yeah, drop it on me, and then I'll tell you where my crazy brain went with it.
All right, so what you do, of course, as a DM, you reserve the right to veto any of the player's ideas, but basically you go around the table and you say, you guys are at the end of the dungeon, you are in the treasure room, how did you get here? And you go around, and each player gets to tell you one monster they defeated and one piece of treasure they found. Right? So they're not, they're first level characters because you're starting off, so you're, it can't be like a Vorpal sword, but they can say a +1 sword or whatever, and so they each get to name a monster and a treasure, right? And then you describe that as they stand in the treasure room, you hear the gears turning and the hallways moving, and the dungeon rearranges itself, and now you have to get out. So you have this treasure. How are you going to carry it out of the dungeon when all the traps are reset and you don't know which way is out?
I just loved the idea of like handing them a map to start, and in 30 seconds that map is completely worthless. I just like crumple it up and throw it out because a wizard did it. I don't know. You entered the labyrinth. You reached the middle. That's only halfway. You got to get out. I think that's something that has been lost in 5th edition, like in older styles of play. It wasn't just go get the gold. It was bring the gold back. That is not a foregone conclusion, right? So often we beat the final boss, we found the secret door, we got the treasure, fade to black, open in the tavern 3 days later. It's like, no, you got a perilous wilderness to cross, and who's to say that the dungeon didn't want you to go to the deepest, lowest level so it could unleash its machinations? Like, ooh, I love that a lot. And this kind of bleeds in a little bit to what's on deck, but I love the idea of giving the players a little more control over, like, how did we get here? Like, you tell me how we get here, and I promise I won't totally use it against you, only mostly. Like,
but yeah, the reverse dungeon does harken back to those old school days when, like, 1 gold was worth 1 experience point. So, you definitely wanted to carry, especially if the DM, like, oh, you find the treasure hoard, and 15,000 of those coins are silver pieces.
right. Right.
So you're like, okay, that's a lot of experience points, even though like even at 10-1, silver to gold, that's how are we going to carry all of this out of here?
Yeah, you're defending the ox cart the entire way through the dungeon now. There's a reason there used to be hirelings that wasn't just to hold the torch, it was to move the stuff around. And you lose something with like in a lot of pre-published modules, you'd be like, why is this the treasure? It's like, well, because here's 1,000-pound bronze statue worth this much gold. Like, you could just cash that into gold, but you're removing part of the game. How do we get this? How do we get this home? How do we find someone who wants to buy this? Right? Like, who's gonna purchase this beautiful art object from aeons past?
Right.
But yeah, the idea you can have everything you want. Go shopping. Here's the DMG. Anything uncommon, take a magic item. You've beaten the dungeon. Congratulations. Maybe we're starting at level 3, level 5. Maybe it isn't a level 1 thing. Like, your character blew their way to this point, and now you're in the middle of the dungeon, and your character thought it was over, but you knew we were done here. And like my mind just like leaps to fill in the gaps of like, how is that happening? Why is that happening? Who made this place? Who made a dungeon that reverses itself? Because that's an interesting antagonist right there.
Right. Yeah. Like, is it like an artificer or, some sort of, or a wizard or, or maybe like if you're going higher levels, it could be like some planar traveler from the plane of mechanists, right? The plane of order, right? And then you could be dealing with some like, giant sentient robot thing, right?
Yeah, the modrons like pour out, and all of a sudden, yeah, you're in trouble. And I just love that concept, even that maybe not as a starting point, just like the idea of like you finish, like, it's a 5-room dungeon. You get to room 5, you beat the big bad, you got the treasure, and you think you're done, right? And you're about to like go home, take a long rest, spend your gold, and it's like, nope, the old Uno reverse card comes out. Yeah, and it's on. They were trying to see like who could make it to the middle, because that's what the person who designed this dungeon wasn't even going to bother with someone who couldn't even make it to the treasure room, and now it's on. Now you've proven yourself worthy to get got by this guy.
Yeah. Well, and I actually haven't done this one before. This is a relatively new idea. But I came up with the idea when I saw in some D&D group, somebody had asked the question, how do you do a good one shot and make sure that you still have time for a good ending?
Hmm.
And so that's when I suggested the reverse dungeon idea. So the idea being like you could also just run it from the beginning, like they enter the dungeon, like a 5-room dungeon, they enter the dungeon, they defeat the bad guy, they get the treasure, and now they have to get out. Right. And so that way, if you're doing the one shot thing and that 5-room dungeon takes up all the time and they get the treasure and they beat the bad guy, good, you can end there.
Right.
But if not, right, you've got the meat in the middle of the story where they beat the bad guy and they get the treasure, and then if you still have time left, then there's let's try to get out of the dungeon, right? So the idea, the dungeon rearranges itself, and if you're doing this as a one shot, the dungeon rearranges itself and you only have 30 minutes of your session left. It could just be a skill challenge, you get out, yay. If but if you have like an hour or hour and a half left of your game session, then it's like, okay, now we're going to play all the way through to getting out of the dungeon. And that would be a way to make sure that your big bad doesn't get cut off at the end of your one shot.
That's a great little like trick to have in your back pocket. I'm gonna hang on to that one, because so often like I'll design like the sacrificial middle, and then like in the middle you have to make that call.
Right.
And then
you're looking at the clock and thinking,
yeah. Like, is this is room like whatever it is, 3-4, like, is that going to be in there or not, right? Is like
right.
Are we good, because we're not doing a full adventuring day. But then all of a sudden they cleverly sneak around something, and like something was going to take 45 minutes and it took 4 minutes, and you're like, oh, well, we can end early and talk about what we think about things, or things change, it's not over. And and now you get to use all that sweets, especially in a one shot. You get to use this, like, you got this +1 sword. Maybe we'll play again someday. Like, no, you get to use it right away. Deeply gratifying.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Hey everybody, this is Future Ryan. Well, for you, it's a different version of past Ryan, but for Ryan and Brad in the video, this is Ryan in the future. I hope you really enjoyed that. I certainly did. It was a great conversation, and if you're seeing this, then I bet you enjoyed it too, which means you're going to enjoy the rest of it. That was only half. It might be less than half. There's some really great stuff going on in the next 5 versions of how to start a campaign, not in a tavern, over on Brad's channel, The Dire Den. Go check that out, and check out the rest of Brad's channel. There's some really good stuff over there. He's got a very formulaic, systematic way of approaching prep that I just really think is great. It's going to help new dungeon masters. It helps experienced dungeon masters, and good dude. Check out his channel, like and subscribe over here, sure, but over there. And yeah, if you have other concepts of how to start a campaign that isn't simply in a tavern, or maybe in a tavern but with a little, twist to it, in the comments down below, leave your ideas. Yeah, and go shopping for other ones down there from other folks. Thanks so much for watching this one. Go watch that one. I'll see you next time. Be kind, have fun.